Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome, everybody, to another episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, right here on the Brushwood Media Network. And I've got a great guest for you today. This individual has done quite a lot in her life and continues to do it. She spends time in Mexico. She spends time in Canada. Okay, that's Canada for those other folks. And she also has ridden a bike from hither and yon to a great distance just because she could. It was pretty amazing. And she's an author, and she's a life mastery coach and consultant. Her name is Lynne Harley, and she is right here, right now. Hey there, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Kevin. And it's just always a delight and a pleasure to be on your program and the way you're sending out those positive vibes into the world. So I want to applaud you for all that you do.
Well, I thank you for that, and I accept that. But you're doing quite a bit all by yourself, too, you know.
I am, yeah. And we were talking about before the show a little bit about when you're really, I think, tuned into what you would love to do. It just seems to happen. It seems there's a knowing about what the next step is, and that's how I feel. I feel like this journey has really been guided for me in especially the last few years, probably just prior to the pandemic.
You know, and we were talking about this in a really broad context kind of way, which is, you know, there are people and there are even gurus out there that'll tell you that if you wish for it, it'll show up, like the law of attraction, which is real. And The Secret and those sorts of things, putting up the boards and doing all that and writing the journal and stuff. And then supposedly magically it's just going to happen overnight. That isn't necessarily the way it's going to work for you, because there's a whole process by which you need to get to where you want to go or want to be. There's a process that you have to learn through that. Has that been your experience?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you know, visions are wonderful. I was just listening to something recently where the speaker said 2% of the population actually writes out intentions and visions. That's it. And out of those 2%, 80% of them are more likely to achieve what they want than not. So there's so much power to it. But I also believe, and especially as a coach and looking at my own life, we can write our vision out. We can feel into what we really want. But we also have to hold it with a very loose hand, I'd like to say, because sometimes the universe has different ideas for where it wants us and what it wants us to do. And so I guess for me, a really great example is just prior to the pandemic, I moved to Alberta for a short period of time. I was going to open a yoga studio, and I took possession of my new home with a beautiful basement studio 1 week after the pandemic. So it was kind of like, okay, what's my plan B? And just a little bit of previous background. In 2017, I lost my brother to suicide. And that was a really devastating time for me as I tried to make sense of his life and, you know, deal with my own grief. I had also lost my mom shortly before that. And as a result of this studio not coming together, I just took a whole different trajectory in my life that wasn't in my plan. And this book that I've written, that I really feel passionate about sharing for youth mental health, was really, I'm going to say, inspired by that particular time in my life. You know, when I was in grief, when I thought about my brother, when I thought about what creates mental health and wellness and the coaching that I've done. And you know, I just started hearing this book that was kind of writing itself in my head. And I thought, okay, it's time to pay attention and put this down on paper. So for me, it hasn't been a straight path. It's been rather convoluted with different dips and valleys and curves and corners, and I didn't even consider myself an author up until then. I hadn't put that on a list of to-dos. I'm going to write a book in this lifetime. So I think what's really important, though, is just to desire to want to be the best version of yourself, and then really start to listen deeply to the things that light you up. What gives you life? What do you feel excited about? And just start to follow those nudgings.
Did you find that when you started writing the book, your first book, which, by the way, the title of which is, again?
It's called What If You Could?
That's right. And that one was very, very successful. And
Yeah.
when you started writing that book, though, did you feel like this was your, I hate to, I hate to use the word destiny or density if you listen to Back to the Future, you are my density. No, you are my destiny. Did you feel like it was your destiny, or was that just going to be the next step of a longer process?
I don't know if I can say that it was either of those. It was just writing itself in my head. And as a coach, I know that sometimes when we're moving forward with something, our paradigms show up in a certain way. They can show up through distraction. When you're working at home, sometimes it's like, oh, just let me go change the laundry. And then I go down the rabbit hole and I don't come back to my desk. Sometimes it's delay. We put things off. And sometimes we just feel really anxious about moving forward. And in coaching, we call that DEFCON, that feeling of physical anxiety. And so when this book was kind of going around in my head, I was thinking, well, maybe this is just a delay and a distraction because I'm trying to get my coaching business going. So this was my intellect was saying, maybe this is just a delay. I should just put that away. But it wouldn't leave me alone. So then I thought, okay, well, I'm going to write this at night. Then I can't say that it's cutting into my work time. And it just really, for me to take the credit for it, I really felt like it was a download. But of course, I needed to edit it, and I worked with an editor and everything. But it just kind of flowed. I knew exactly the way I wanted the story to go. And then when I finished it, there was this whole set of thinking, which my book is really about. Well, who am I to write a book? And how am I going to write it? And who's going to buy it? And blah, 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 blah. But this is really important. And I want to really emphasize this to listeners. I read something by I've got so many great teachers, but Price Pritchett, he wrote the book Quantum Leaps. And he wrote a blog one day, and it was right about when I finished the book. It was just a fairly rough manuscript. And he said, what if these ideas that land in your mind are gifts from this infinite, this divine, this intelligence? And what if you are being selected to take these and run with them and birth them and bring them to earth? And he says, how many times have you had a really great idea and you've talked yourself out of it only to hear that somebody else has done it down the road? And that, I just feel like we're always being guided through little things like that, through just the right person saying the right thing at the right time. Maybe you read a billboard. But when I read that, it caused me to sit up a little bit straighter and think about the fact that maybe this book wasn't my creation fully. Maybe this was, a divine co-creation of a gift that I could bring into the world. And once I embraced it that way, then I just fully gave my heart and soul to it. And, and then things did happen for it to get published and to find the right editor to work with. And then it started winning awards. And I was just thinking, from where I am now, and you probably feel this way too. So many times I thought, what if I had let that voice stop me? Even my bike ride, when I took off on my bike, I was terrified. But by the time I finished my ride, I thought, I can't imagine being at the end of my life and thinking that I had missed that experience. And I think that as I mature, I'm going to call myself a maturing adult, I'm feeling more and more that way, that life is really about the experiences that we have and the way that we can share ourselves, our gifts, our talents in the world. And every one of us has been made unique. And, I just think we have to start really trusting that we all have something to give the world. We just don't always know what it is. And I think that if you start asking for some guidance, you're going to get some cues, you're going to get some ideas. I think you're going to just keep following. In my book, it's about keep listening to that voice in your heart that says, what if you could? What if you could? Ask those expansive questions. What would I love? Not what's practical. What should I be doing? I should be grateful for what I have. And a lot of people talk themselves out of their dreams with that kind of inner dialogue.
I'm going to say that falls under the category of most, because you've written a second book, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But that the premise of the second book goes right along with what we're talking about here, and that is a lot of times in many cases, you get presented with what your soul would like you to do and the reason that you actually came here, and you set this up for yourself, and then somebody, generally speaking, it's somebody who says they love you, says, "Oh no, Lynn, you can't do that. That's you're going to go on a bike ride across the country. No, you can't do that. You need to settle down now, and you need to worry about your retirement and making enough money, and all of those things that they bring up, which is nothing to do with what your soul's mission is or what your mission is." And so a lot of us will not follow through and do. I mean, the same thing kind of almost happened to me with the radio thing. That my whole radio career has been an accident that was no accident, if that makes sense.
A divine accident.
It was a divine accident that involved other people, and what they told me that I didn't even recognize was the case. A guy came to me and said, "We should do a television show about what we're learning," and that turned into the radio show. And then the job went away, and that turned into a bigger radio show, and then that went away. So step by step throughout our lives, those things happen to us. That's happening to you. It's happening to you right now. You should be very, very pleased and looking forward to the future for what's going on for you now. It really is exciting to watch. Do you feel like you're the participant, or do you feel like you are watching everything go on and kind of just enjoying the ride?
No, I think I'm an active participant, I would have to say. But the other thing that I want to share is when I traveled, I was in Mexico this winter, and I also published the Spanish version of my What If You Could, which is now called Y Si Pudieras. So, and I changed the illustrations slightly to prepare for my next book. When in March, I had this thought, and this is just for me, and I'm sharing sort of my process of trying to listen more deeply, really listen into my heart about what's going to serve me moving forward. And I made a decision in March to take a step back from social media for me, in the sense that, I felt like I was spending a lot of time, even though I had some support, giving the content to my person to create Instagram posts and Facebook posts. And it was kind of making me crazy. And I thought, that's a big distraction for me. And when I really thought about the opportunities that have come for me, it's usually because of some synchronistic opportunity or meeting. It's not because I've made 1,000 posts on Instagram in 3 months. And so I just decided that I was going to put it on the side and try to just, when I got back to Canada, to listen to the things that felt really inspired. And it's amazing how things have opened up in terms of the way I want to move forward with my life. So I'm also at a stage in my life that I'm not out to create a full-time career. I'm really trying to create a balance where I have time for work, for play, for family, for friends, for self-care. And so I'm looking for opportunities where I can share my message in a way that's impactful. And I had this first inspired thought, well, what if you just write a letter to the libraries in Canada? This is, call it in the sales field, low-hanging fruit. Libraries buy books. And so I So I put out letters about, hey, I'm this award-winning author. I've written this great book. I speak on behalf of youth mental health, and all of a sudden I get this call, and I've been now invited and put in contract to do a reading tour across all of northern Saskatchewan because of one of these letters that got into the library. And it was the first time that they'd done a tour since prior to the pandemic. So that was a really wonderful experience. And also, what's the word I want to use here? Made me realize that often in these northern isolated communities, they're the ones that really need messages like this. They really need that extra, message of empowerment. Well, as a result of doing that, now I've been invited to speak at a teachers conference. So again, it's just like, I call it following the breadcrumbs. I'm trying to follow the things that are giving me life and that I think feel like they're going to make a difference. And then it seems like, and I've heard that in your story too, Kevin, is that then all of a sudden, when you think about driving in the dark at night, this is such a great analogy. If I'm driving I live in southeastern Saskatchewan, all the way across the province at night, I only need to see as far as my headlights will take me. And once I get around the corner, my headlights will show me the next part of the route. And so that really serves me to know that my work is not to know how everything's going to happen. It's just to really lean in and invite what's my next inspired action and then take it. So what stops most people, and you were kind of alluding to that, is the start. We talk ourselves out of it, or significant other people talk us out of it. And if we're not really firm on what we want to do, it's easy to waver. As soon as somebody, questions or raises that eyebrow, you're going to do that, really? Sometimes that's enough to really shut us down. So go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, especially where money is involved. And in my case, it was my career. And you're going to walk away from that to what? And stuff. And so, by the way, I want to introduce a young lady who is relatively new to my team, but she is becoming a very, very important part of it. And Lynn, I'd like you to meet Rochelle. She comes
Hi,
to us from
Lynn.
Colorado
Hi,
today.
Michelle.
And by the way,
Hello,
Rochelle,
nice to meet you.
this is not the same lady that I thought it was earlier because they have the same name. This is different. But so if you need to look at her website, which I highly suggest everybody do, it's Lynne Harley, and Lynn with an E, Harley.com. And we need to take a real quick break. And I think Rochelle's already looked at your website, so she already knows. She's a smart girl. We need to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk more with Lynn. And by the way, the inspiration that occupies her life in a very meaningful way that a lot of people, I hear this all the time from authors. I don't know where it came from. It was a download. It was an inspiration. It was a thought. It was a thing. And the same thing has happened to you. And it's an important aspect of living our lives, and because those things happen for us all the time. And if we pay attention, that's the key. We're going to ask Lynn how she pays attention when we come back from this really quick message. So please stay with us.
You're listening to Positive Talk Radio. We're going to take a short break to tell you audio and music creators about our commercial affiliate, Lyric Vids, specializing in creating amazing and engaging lyric videos. Are you looking to promote your videos in the most engaging way, but you don't have an animator and an editor? Whether you're an artist, musician, or business with a message to share, our lyric videos are designed to hook viewers and amplify your reach. Go to positivetalkradio.net/lyric vids. That's positivetalkradio.net/LYRICVIDS now to get started. Welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. We hope you enjoyed learning about our affiliate Lyric Vids, who specialize in creating captivating animated lyric videos. Now let's get back to the show.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Everybody likes that song. They don't think they're going to when it starts, but then it begins, and then everybody likes that song. So Lynne Harley's with us. And by the way, before we get too far, apparently, Rochelle, we need to tell that Holly has a personal friend from Mexico. His name is Enrique, and he says hello to her. And from Guadalajara, Mexico. By the way, Lynn, where did you spend the winter? It wasn't Guadalajara.
Okay, this is I'm getting one of those moments. Do. Yesterday. So Enrique, if you're listening, yesterday I booked, and this is one of those do it afraids. I registered for the International Book Market in Guadalajara on December 1st. So I am flying there on my own, and I'm going to be in Guadalajara for a week. So maybe if Enrique wants to show me around, I would be open to spending time with him.
And Rochelle, I got to tell you, Lynn is somebody that she'll just pack up and go to Mexico for 6 months, and then she'll come back, and then she'll whatever, and then she'll come back and she'll ride a bicycle across Canada, or at least part of Canada, and then she'll write a book, and so when we talk about inspiration, what does it mean to you? Where do these things? Is it in the shower? Is it when do you feel the most inspired?
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting because this summer I live in a very sleepy little town. I mean, I love it. I feel like I'm in a bubble because there's 238 people here. It's very rural. And I was busy with my tour and everything in July. And I wrote my newsletter at the end of July. And I just said, you know what? I am just going to paddleboard and cycle. That was my new thing this year. I started paddleboarding and write my book. And so, the first couple of days I'm at home, I'm thinking I should be writing it. And finally, one day I thought, I'm going to take my manuscript and my paddleboard to the lake. So I had my dry bag with everything packed up. And honestly, it's like I broke through a writer's block. I just spent the day on the lake. I paddleboarded. I would get an idea. I would go into shore. I'd write it down. I'd think about it, get back on my paddleboard. Or the other one is that I cycle in rural Saskatchewan, and it is breathtaking. Every time I go out there, I just think, will I ever get tired of this? The expansive skies, the changing fields we are going through. This is very much farm country, but also lake country. So I really get a lot of inspiration when I'm in nature. And I'm also a meditator. And when I use that word, I don't want to scare anybody, because it doesn't mean you have to sit cross-legged somewhere in a cave for hours.
As if some of us could sit cross-legged. Anyway, go ahead.
It's really what meditation is it's slowing down long enough to hear your thoughts, to really start to listen to what's the narrative there. And the more clear you get and what's running the show, the more you're able to repattern it. Because when I especially speak for mental health, I'm going into a whole school on Tuesday to speak from K to 12 in 3 different presentations. It's just that we have to start to realize that everybody has that inner critic, that has that voice, the one that says, well, who do you think you are? How's that ever going to happen? And starting to identifying it and then calling it out and just going, I see you, I'm on to you, and this is not the voice that I'm going to put my faith in. So, people, if they want to just start to cry, it's almost like creating space in your head and people often say, well, I can't meditate because I don't stop thinking. And it's almost like your thinking seems busier at first because you never stop to think what you're thinking. We are very good at distracting ourselves, right? Put on the TV, watch Netflix, talk to a friend, check my Instagram, check this, check that. And so it can be very almost disturbing to be alone with your thoughts for too long. But that's the beginning, is having that awareness of what's going on in the background.
Well, and Rochelle will appreciate this because she's on kind of a semi vacation, and she went to Colorado. And Colorado, in certain places where, especially where she's at, is just beautiful, and there's nature everywhere and stuff. So she's getting the idea. Well, I hate to speak for you. You tell us.
No worries, Kevin. Yeah, I can relate to you, Lynn. Just, I inspire, first of all, to be that person who just gets up and goes. I got my passport a few months ago, and I'm trying to plan my first trip by myself to go to Bali, Indonesia for 4 months, and that will be exciting. But yeah, being here, I'm originally from Salt Lake City, Utah, and it is nothing like here. You know, the people are kind of angry and all over the place and unaware of themselves. But here, it's like that
Mhm.
little population just out in the middle of nowhere, farm town, and everybody kind of supports each other. They're very connected and more understanding of just life and what it really means, what it's really about, which is not what city people think the same of. It's humbling, it's grounding. It makes me want to wake up before the sun sets so I can watch it come up. And I have probably 300 pictures already in the last week of the sky because it's just learning to sit with where you are in that exact moment, let alone let your mind rest
Mhm.
without having to just think about everything. There's really no words for it, and I'm convinced that I want to buy property here and come live here and spend time with my family next year again because um it helped me really like grasp onto who I'm becoming and kind of follow that, and also like what's really important. It's not about anything physical. I said this earlier in an interview we did. I realize that I'm rich already, right now, not because of my money situation or anything physical that I have around me to hold, but because of where I'm at. Like, if heaven is a place on earth, I'm convinced I have found it. And it's just a beautiful experience. And I'm sucking it up to be every single second that I can while I'm here.
I love that. Yeah. And you
It's
just,
highly irritating that she's 25. You know what I mean, Lynn?
yeah, I wasn't quite there at that age. I don't, better late than never, though, right, Kevin?
Well, you know what? The cool thing is, never is never. It never ends. It
Yeah.
continues.
Yeah. It does. And I was in the study years ago. It's just that it's taking me deeper in different ways. And yeah, I think you just have to really listen deeply to your intuition, to your gut feeling, and get out of your head. That's the other thing is we can tend to intellectualize everything that it's not practical for me to be here or whatever it is, right? So I just applaud you for listening deeply and Bali's on my list too. So
Thank you. Well, I hope to see you there.
What
actually
what
think
is it about Bali?
it's kind of a spiritual vortex too. I mean, it's a very, I think about when I go to Ajijic in Mexico, which is south of Guadalajara, they say that that's a spiritual vortex. So similar energy as Sedona. Most people in the States are familiar with Sedona in Arizona. And Bali is supposed to be another kind of spiritual mecca in terms of just, I guess, following your heart and see. Maybe you're going to find that
Yeah.
teacher, that person, a place where you can share some of your gifts and talents. I think it's the desire, and you can speak about this, Rochelle, to maybe meet like-minded people who are also on a journey similar to what you are. Because when we started the show, Kevin, you said, like there's not very many people out there that really live deeply into their heart's desires. It's easy. It's comfortable. I don't want to say it's easy.
Mm.
I think it's comfortable to not move outside of what you know, but it's not very satisfying in the end. I don't think so.
Yeah, you
Uh,
get to definitely choose your hard. That's what I've realized. Whether you're comfortable and whether you're not, you're choosing what hard you want. And when you stay where you're comfortable, the can't reach you enough to allow the change that needs to happen to build you into who you're trying to be. And I love that you have gone to Mexico because that is actually where I will go next after I'm in Indonesia.
yeah, and I was going to go to Indonesia this year, but now that I'm starting in Guadalajara, I was thinking maybe I'll just stay in Mexico this winter because I want to spend 2 months this year learning Spanish because I've been studying at home on my own, but I want to immerse myself. So yeah, there's lots of
Beautiful.
options for sure. But just something you said I want to build on. So both of my books, the one that's coming out and the What If You Could, it's really about how nature transforms. It doesn't fight it. Nature is always evolving. It's always growing. And the first story is about the caterpillar who can think. We know caterpillars can't think, but because he can, he's wanting more for his life. So it really follows the natural cycle of a caterpillar to where they flip upside down and they hang there, and then they start with the chrysalis and then the metamorphosis. But he hears from the voice after he has this big audacious dream of flying, and not eating leaves anymore. And really, when you think about it, there's nothing in that caterpillar, if you're holding it in your hand, that says it's going to look like a butterfly. It's a completely different form. And so it is a transformation. And I love what you said. You get to choose your hard, but it's so much more satisfying. And that's how we grow as individuals. And I think one of the most important points to make about being on this journey, it's not about the destination, it's who you become in the process. It's a process of becoming. And so you're already acknowledging that this isn't going to be easy, but it's leading ultimately to the highest version of the person that I want to show up as every day, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So
And she's moving forward in a great big way. Speaking of moving forward, we need to take a station break. And so we're going to do that, and we will be right back after this. We're talking with Lynne Harley. Go to her website, which is Lynne with an E, Harley.com. And we'll be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald and Lynne Harley and Brichelle. And it's great for all of us to get together, and it's a wonderful conversation that we're having. Lynne is the author of a couple of books now. One is, the second book is not quite out yet, correct?
Correct.
And when does it come out?
In the meta. Well, I'm not quite finished it. I'm just about there. I just have to wind it up now. And then I'm going to find an editor to support me to go through it, and then get it translated and get the illustrations done. It'll be available in English and Spanish for sure. Yeah, so that's...
Well, you're going to have to come back when it's time for that book to be released. But the title of the book is, or will be, or it tentatively is...
Okay, well, this is the sequel. Okay, this is the first part is What If You Could, and the sequel is called Do It Afraid. So that's kind of like your hard, that if you really want to live into your dreams, it often means that we're walking into the abyss, and that takes spiritual fortitude and really living into the unknown. And, just even a little biology lesson on the metamorphosis of the caterpillar to butterfly. When it's in the chrysalis phase, everything that is caterpillar dissolves into a goo. There's a point in that chrysalis where there's nothing there but goo. But what is there in that goo are the imaginal cells of that butterfly and its central nervous system. But if you were to open it up, it would just look like goo. And the metaphor for us is that when we're in the midst of change, we're releasing a lot of what no longer serves us. Sometimes we're even letting go of relationships, people, jobs, whatever it is, homes, moving forward. And we don't know yet how it's going to turn out. Just like you said, you're not sure. But what we have, which is similar to the chrysalis phase, is we have a vision. When we really lean in and write out what we want, that's our imaginal cells. And the central nervous system is our ability to think into that vision. And sometimes that's the only thing that is keeping us going when we're in the midst of that transformation. So this is the rigor of transformation. It's trusting the process, trusting that it's going to come together. And it's a this or even better still. We have to, I think, learn to hold our vision. I don't want to say lightly. It's important to have it, but to just understand that if it doesn't come out the way you absolutely thought, it's because there's an even better and bigger version that's happening.
Shouldn't we need to trust, and we need to know that the universe is acting on our best behalf. And if you meditate and talk to the other side, like I do, I'm not sure that they may cause me to have medication. But because I talk to the other side and I know that they have my best interest in their heart and what they are doing, I just let it go. It's like, and Rochelle knows I don't. Well, okay, occasionally I do, but I try not to stress over stuff. Because everything's going to work out fine. It is the way that's designed to be. And as an example, I was telling Rochelle, I want you to think about yourself in 20 years, or in my case, another 40 years, and think about where you can be then versus where you are today. And Lynne, isn't it remarkable that she is on that journey and can go through that over that period of time? You and I we're a little slower. It took us a little longer to figure this part out.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. And I just think of all the lives that you're going to change, just through your presence. Sometimes we don't have to be necessarily writing books but I mean, here you are, you're actually on this wonderful opportunity to share what you're doing with your life and reach other people. But I think it's just really showing up as your best self day in and day out, and also cutting yourself some slack. We're all going to have those days where, we wonder. I know that there's a friend of mine who's going through some difficult things right now, and I was listening to one of my teachers, and he just reminded me that often the hardest times are right before we have breakthroughs. And this is often too when people want to quit. And this is what my book is about, this Do It Afraid. It's about trusting that the way will be made as long as you stay connected to your vision and you're willing to do it afraid. So yeah, it's a hard that you're choosing.
And by the way, comments like this make this worth my time and my life to do. Gowdy
Kevin,
says,
I have to say that is my dad.
That's your dad?
Dad. Yeah.
Hey, Dad, how you doing, man? Okay, so you set your dad up to do that, did you?
Hey, Dad.
And I didn't. He subscribed, and his phone tells him when there's podcasts coming up. So he's become one of our huge followers and lovers of what we do, and I'm more than thankful. I love my dad. He's my number one fan.
Well, Dad, your daughter's on her way to becoming quite the young and adult who's going to have an impact. She's definitely going to have an impact in the world, and that is so. Your dad, come on, just set that up. Anyway, in any event, that is, but that's what it's all about. And it's like when I started, did you know, I got a statistic for you, Lynn, because I don't know if you know this. Did you know how long the average podcast goes before somebody pulls the plug because they call it podcast fade? You know how long that is?
I don't.
Oh, come on, guess.
Okay, well, I'm guessing it's not very long. I'm going to say 6 months to a year.
It's 20 episodes.
Okay, well, if you were going to do one a week, that would be 6 months ish. Yeah.
And the reason it's only that is because people give up.
Yeah.
Now I got 800 episodes of this and 400 of that and 600 of that because you can't give up. You've got to keep going. Because I given up a year ago, I would not have had the opportunity to meet Rochelle or her dad, or to have him write into the show that we're doing, or any of that, or Enrique, who's apparently in love with Holly. I won't go there, but and all of that. It's important that if you feel called to do something, do not ever give up.
Yeah.
Do you know, one of my favorite sayings was, do you know who Vince Lombardi was?
Yeah. Was he a speaker?
Well, he was a football coach.
Oh, okay.
He coached the Green Bay Packers, and in when he was talking to his team, he would say, we are 16-0 every year. And they said, well, no, coach, last year we were 8-8, and the year before that we were 7-9. He said, no, you don't understand. We've never lost a game, but we have run out of time a few times.
Love that. And you know what? That's a growth mindset. And again, when we want to live into mental health and wellness, I'm getting my presentation ready for school kids, and I was thinking, well, how do I describe what a growth mindset? It's like having the ability to put on a different pair of glasses to look for the positive. And that young people, anybody who starts to see problems as growth opportunities versus problems has far more resilience. It's just that reframe. It's that ability. And so, we have to be able to realize, and we all love those stories. I love watching true stories of people who beat all the odds. Like my hero is Diana Nyad. I mean, she resurrects her dream in her 60s to swim across from, Havana to Key West. And she has like 3 or 4 miserable failures. And now they've got a great movie. And it just shows like she could have given up. She was so tenacious about not giving up. And all of her crew wanted to give up on her. And so you just think sometimes it's just that one more try. Again, if this is something she wanted more than anything in the world, she could have easily walked away from it when everybody else wanted to.
Boy, I've got a trivia question for both of you. I'm on a roll, so here's a trivia question. See if Rochelle, if you can get this. Do you know who Roger Bannister was?
Yes, he ran the first minute mile.
He ran the first 4-minute mile. Yeah.
Oh, 4 minute? I was close.
You were close. And they had, Rochelle, in this time and space, there were doctors that would say, I'm sorry, the human body just can't go that fast. Because so the 4-minute mile was a milestone. And nobody could get under 4 minutes. And everybody tried until this one guy, his name was Roger Bannister, and he got under the 4-minute mile. Do you know that within the next year,
the next couple of months, I think it was
something like some ridiculous number, 5 or 6 guys also went under 4 minutes because he proved mentally and in his mind that it could be done. Yeah. And so if you just let it go and know that it can be done, even if nobody's done it before, you can do it. And just be aware of that. And that's just is a great story for me, because it's like you can do anything, but just don't quit.
And you have to believe in it. So again, I'm preparing for these presentations, and I want to share the story of Nelson Mandela, because I think, we talk about how long does a dream take? Well, all he knew, was that he wanted he was against the apartheid. He wanted equality for everybody. And at 44, he was imprisoned for life. And for the first 10 years of his life, you think about his thinking, It was, I'm never going to get out of here. I'm never going to get out of here. This is what he's running, his neural pathway. I'm never going to get out of here. Until one day, I love this because of what he says, he looks out his window and he said, it was as if I heard a voice from my heart that said, what if you could? It's the title of my book, by the way. What if you could? You know, and in that moment, it caused him. And when we have that out of the box thinking, and I think that this is what dreamers are, they have the ability to think beyond what everybody else will tell you is possible. He started to have different inspired ideas about moving forward. And so he was in prison for life, but 27 years later, he walked out of that prison at 71 years old as a free man. When he was there, he continually improved himself. He took his advanced degree in law when he was in prison. In 1993, I think 3 years after he was released, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. And in 1995, at age 75, he became the first Black president of South Africa. So that was a 27-year-old dream in the making. And I don't think that when he went into prison, he had any idea that any of this stuff was going to happen. But it was the day that he decided to think differently, that there could be a way that would happen, that he would get out, that he started to take different actions and write letters and befriended the guards and had them delivered to the right people in the right time in the right place. So I love that story because it speaks of perseverance, like you were saying, Kevin. Just don't quit. All he knew, he didn't know he wanted to be president. He just knew that he wanted to fight for freedom for everybody. And it was such a beautiful cause.
Burchelle, your dad's quite the guy. I'm looking forward to meeting him. Most people quit when they are 90% to their goal and don't even realize it. Interesting stat, huh? And that is so true. And then he writes, never give up, never quit. It's like what is that, Toy Story? Anyway, you would know better than I, but
They actually say that in the what is it, Jurassic Park? That's where I know it from.
Oh, there's another, anyway, but it's a, you know, never give up, never quit. It's an important aspect of life, because you're giving up on your dreams. You're also giving up on what the universe wants for you and what you want for yourself. And that's the coolest thing in the world, is to be able to know what you want for yourself and to follow through with it. And speaking of which, I need to follow through on a break, and we need to take this. It's 30 seconds. Everybody just calm down. We'll be right back.
They have your eyes. They have your ears. They have your smile. Now all they need is a little more of your time. Make a difference in your child's life, because anyone can be a father. It takes time to be a dad.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And by the way, go to Lynne with an E, Harley.com. Find out all about her. Get her book that's out now. And it's a children's book, but it has relevance for all of us. And then when she gets the other book written and finished and edited and all that other stuff, she's going to come back and we're going to talk about that as well. So Lynne, first of all, thank you for coming here and sharing everything with us. It's been a fascinating discussion. What do you think, Burchelle?
I think it's been amazing. And the question I've got for you, Lynn, is what age were you when you had that wake up that was just very prominent, where you knew what you wanted was more, although maybe many people around you told you that what you wanted wasn't possible?
Well, for me, and I don't know if it was so much other people, but I think I told myself what I wanted was possible. I was diagnosed with cancer when I was 42 years old. So, I mean, I had been on this journey, but that really flattened me out. And everything in my life basically unraveled. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes that's part of the process. So my marriage ended. I became a single parent. The business I was in with my partner at that time was dissolved. And so here I was. And I was very afraid. I was afraid of my future. I had 3 small boys. Would I see them grow up? And I had a defining moment when I was preparing my home for them to come and spend. They were going to be with me half time. And I was painting the bathroom and I fell hard into the tub. I was like up on the sink trying to get the top. And I laid there, and I mean, I really hurt myself. And I climbed out of the tub and dragged myself into the bedroom. And all of a sudden I had this epiphany. I thought, I was so worried that cancer was going to take me out. That fall could have taken me out. That moment I realized that life is fleeting. It's fragile. None of us knows how long we have. And that I was not just going to be a cancer survivor. I was going to thrive for however much time I had. So that was huge for me. It was really a big, and that's when I started visioning. And it was a stretch. When I did my first vision board and went to a workshop, she's telling me like dream big. And I'm thinking, well, I don't have a job. I'm raising these kids alone. I don't know if I'm going to live, but I got into it, and everything that I wrote down, and that time she had us choose a time that we wanted to. And so I thought, well, I'll wait until my children are grown up. That's when I'll see them. My son's grad. Anyways, it all happened, but it happened probably within 5 years. And you know what? I just haven't looked back. I'm so grateful for that moment. And not to say I haven't had some challenging times since I have, but it's just like you said, the hard times have brought me to where I am and to be the person I am today. And I feel proud of who I am and how I'm showing up in the world. So,
and
great.
Rochelle,
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Who's that? Who made the comment? Read the comment.
Well, Brent Gowdy from Salt Lake City said, once again, thank you, Lynn, for your sharing. And yeah, thank you. I'm so thankful beyond everything that although you may have been through all of those things and had that fall and had that cancer, that you are still here and I got to meet you, and you give me hope and inspiration for knowing that as long as I believe in myself, I can do anything under the sky and all the way down into the earth. Because I want more. I want everything that everyone around me tells me is impossible or isn't willing to achieve themselves because they're afraid. And I've also allowed fear to absorb within me and use it as power rather than something that shuts me down. Because as Kevin knows, I've been through a lot, and specifically the last 6 months to a year. And I wanted to give up, and I don't really know when the change happened, but something that stuck with me, Kevin taught me when I first came into this amazingness that I do with him, is nothing happens to you, it happens for you. And being able to just accept any and everything that happens and choosing how I'm going to move forward and how I'm going to handle it is what really matters. So yeah, just thank you for being on the show, and you give me so much hope.
Well, thank you for what you shared. It's beautiful, and I believe in you, and I know you're going to do great things. So,
The coolest thing, and Lynn, and sorry to interrupt, but I got to say this, because the coolest thing is a year ago with a group of friends that Rochelle was hanging around with, if she would have said, you know what, in a year, I'm going to be doing something completely different. I'm going to be on one of the top podcasts in the world. I'm going to be part of this amazing journey. I'm going to go on these things. They would have laughed at her. They would have said, oh, yeah,
And
sure.
I would have been mad. Like, whatever. I don't even care. I don't care about anything. I was angry, but I had to go through it.
And can I just say, I know we're probably getting close to the end, and there's a couple things I want to end with. One is that
5 minutes.
If people, how many minutes?
5.
Okay. If people, first of all, visit my website, there's also a companion journal that I've written for adults. And it basically works you through the deeper metaphors of my book, and it'll get you started. So I really encourage people who are trying to figure out what next to read it. And I hope that it supports them. And what was the second thing I was going to say? Oh, So on September 10th, it's World Suicide Prevention Day. And what I loved, and you said, is that, a year ago, you were in a completely different place. And this is if, people are out there who are struggling, just know that just because you're somewhere that feels deep and dark right now, that doesn't mean that it's not, as Kevin said, for your good. I mean, I basically had the rug pulled out from underneath me with my cancer diagnosis, but that's what caused me to finally pay attention, to really listen and honor what was trying to live, through me. So, suicide, and I'm not presuming to know what anybody else is feeling when they get to that point, but it's a permanent solution to what could be a temporary experience. We don't know how the story is going to unfold. So thank you for sharing that you were at a place that was difficult and your life is completely different right now.
I was ready to give up. I was ready at any moment. God, just take me. And he said, no, you have more work to do because I have bigger, better things that are ahead of you that you couldn't possibly imagine. And for the first time in my life, I am happy to say that I'm proud of myself. I love myself, and nobody could do it better. So I've come a long way. It's amazing.
Yes, she has. And by the way, this is where I need to put in, because if you are in the United States and you are feeling alone and you're feeling like there is no place for you here, number one, I want to tell you you're wrong. You are an important piece of humanity and you need to stay here for as long as you're supposed to. And secondly, there's a telephone number I want you to call. It's 988. That is a national crisis hotline. If you feel like you're all alone, call 988 and a counselor will send you in the right direction. So that's 988. Thank you, Lynne, for doing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. It's just always so uplifting to be on your program, and hopefully there's listeners out there that have really been impacted by what they've heard today from everybody's sharing. So, or
maybe even somebody's papa.
Yes. Nice to meet you, Goody.
And with that, we've got about a minute left, Lynne. First of all, LynneHarley.com, Lynne with an E, Harley.com is her website. Go there. And anything you'd like to add before we go?
Harley like the motorcycle. So don't forget that it's Ley.
Oh, okay. Good. Gotcha.
The E and the EY. So Harley like the motorcycle. No, I'm just looking forward to hearing how your journey unfolds and your trip to Bali. I'll be wanting to know exactly how that turned out, because that seriously is on my bucket list. I do want to get there, but
yeah, I will save your email and I will reach out.
Okay, wonderful. I appreciate that.
Nope, I've heard they have snakes there. I'm not going. So
snakes in the United States, Kevin.
Not where I live. I want to thank everybody for paying attention. Lynne, thank you so much for being here. Rochelle, you add a lot to the show, and I really appreciate you. And Gowdy, thank you so much for participating with us as well. It really is cool. And I want to thank everybody for being here. And we'll see you next time on Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald.
Good. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another, because each other's all we've got.